Draft recap right there with the quarterbacks. Kimmy, what do fantasy managers need to know now that Trevor Lawrence is down in Jacksonville?
Okay, what do you need to know? Trevor Lawrence is very good at football. He's very good at throwing the football. However, in terms of fantasy football, you guys, please do not feel like you need to reach for Trevor Lawrence. I could see him going probably around 12, 13. I think that's probably his ADP in this offseason. I think something to be mindful of is that you don't need to reach to get him. I would reach to get your starting quarterback and then draft Trevor Lawrence second. Now, I do think that Trevor Lawrence means incredible things for Marvin Jones, who joined Jacksonville, as well as Laviska Shenault and hopefully DJ Chark as well. Trevor Lawrence will be incredible, but please just pump the brakes on the fantasy output.
One of the things I really like about this situation is that not many teams, if any, threw the ball more than the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, and I anticipate them being in a similar type situation. That's what really benefited Justin Herbert last year, is that the Chargers had to continue to throw the ball in every game they were in. I see Jacksonville being in a very similar situation. So, Kimmy, I agree with you. That's why I make Trevor Lawrence my second quarterback, or my QB2 on my own team.
Ooh, I like that one. I really like the opportunity, like you said, Kimmy, for Marvin Jones Jr. and probably Laviska Shenault as well. Maybe DJ Chark too, because we need the song. But ultimately, what I think is going to happen here, I think week one, we're all going to be like, we probably should have drafted him just based on that week one matchup. But ultimately, I think that he's going to be kind of a guy who later in the season, maybe you could pick up off the waiver wire. So unless your bench is deep enough, you don't need to go ahead and draft him necessarily. I'm not saying he's not going to be good, but I do think you're going to really want to take the uptick for Marvin Jones Jr. and take that and put it on your bench.
You know, when we keep talking about Trevor Lawrence, a name that keeps popping up is Justin Herbert in terms of what he potentially could be in his rookie season. Maybe a high bar, but I mean, that's sort of where the expectations are for Lawrence coming into the NFL. All right. Moving on to Zach Wilson. Rank, what do you expect from the Jets rookie quarterback in this new offense?
Well, I expect him to be the starter. I mean, they're going to hand him the job, and Mike LaFleur's there, and he's coming over from the 49ers system. And I don't know. Like, I just sit here and I watch Zach Wilson, and I'm like, okay, like I know that BYU isn't in the Mountain West anymore, but even a Mountain West schedule would have been better than what they were doing. And then everybody just decided, like, this is the guy. This was the unanimous number 2 overall selection. And we're not going to take the guy who dominated in a Power 5 conference. But whatever, I will say he's going to start. He's going to get an opportunity. He's going to throw the football. And I think this Jets offense could put up a lot of yards and points.
I know a lot of folks in Fresno and Hawaii are probably shaking their head at that whole Mountain West thing you just threw out there.
I like the Mountain West.
Look, the Mountain West football is fun, no doubt about it. Boise State, too. I got to give them a shout out. You know what? I'm wondering, though, what this means for Jamison Crowder. Part of the reason we liked Jamison Crowder in fantasy the last few years is because Sam Darnold loved his slot receivers like chicken and waffles. That's how they went together. I don't know if Zach Wilson is going to have the same affinity for his slot receivers that Sam Darnold did. On top of it, I'm sort of wondering exactly what Crowder's role in this offense is going to be now that they've drafted Eli Moore. I mean, there's talk that Moore really could push for some slot snaps in this offense. Does that mean Crowder moves to the outside? There's still a lot of question marks there. And so a guy that we sort of loved as kind of a wide receiver 3, a nice flex option from week to week, I think might take a hit in this new offense with Zach Wilson there.
I don't think anyone who's telling you they know what to expect from Zach Wilson knows what they're talking about yet, especially because I don't even know if the coach knows yet. But one thing they do know is that Tevin Coleman was brought over, and the purpose for him was to really help out executing this offense. They have scheme familiarity from San Francisco. So for me, especially in the first few weeks of the season, while they're all getting adjusted to NFL game speed, this guy is going to be one that the team relies on, and we're going to see Tevin Coleman have a nice pop, especially in the beginning of the season.
Well, you mentioned San Francisco, and they may be through the biggest smoke screen up throughout all of draft season. They take Trey Lance, but Cynthia, his path to the starting job doesn't look so clear right now.
Well, first of all, I never am going to believe Kyle Shanahan until like week 1 and we see who starts, because that's his game and that's a fun game and he should play that with us. But when it comes to Trey Lance, he has played 1 game in like the past year. I'm not sure what to expect at all. If Jimmy Garoppolo is still there, I would say probably against the Lions, it's going to be Jimmy's kind of starting job to lose. So especially in the beginning of the season, I don't necessarily think we're going to see him, despite the fact that he is a good rushing quarterback. He does get to the second level really reliably, but that could be good for fantasy kind of later on.
I think it's going to be good for fantasy if and when he becomes the starter there in San Francisco. But I do think it's sort of bad news for the 49ers running backs. I mean, we already have to deal with this crowded rotation. We always are trying to figure out week to week who necessarily is the guy to start. But Lance's rushing ability, first off, can eat into some of those rushing attempts for the running backs. Plus, you go back in last year, look at the starting quarterbacks who ran for 400 or more yards over the course of the season. Chase Edmonds was the only running back in one of those offenses that had 50 or more receptions. So that cuts into some of those PPR points that you might get from some of those running backs as well. So Trey Lance, I think good individually for fantasy, but maybe hurts some of those running backs there behind him in that Niner offense.
Oh, a quarterback high on intangibles, highly athletic, didn't play a lot of football. As a Bears fan, I can tell you that always works out. But let me talk about George Kittle, who grew up a Bears fan. There was a guy on Twitter being like, is this the time we move off from George Kittle? And I'm like, why would you ever want to do that? This is when you want to buy in on George Kittle. I don't care who the quarterback is. And as Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel kind of establish themselves, that's going to open it up for George Kittle. I expect this to be a return to what he did in 2019. So no, we're not backing off on George Kittle at all.
I feel like Dynasty fantasy players, I think they also, moonlight on Wall Street bets because they're always trying to make the move, maybe a little bit too early sometimes. All right, Look, we have to get to Justin Fields. He goes to the Bears at number 11. Is he worth a fantasy pick? Do we need him on our fantasy rosters? I feel like there's only one person on this show that we have to ask this question to. Adam Rank, the floor is yours.
All right, well, first of all, let me tell you something. Jets, 49ers, Detroit, you're in this mix too. Carolina, you will all rue the day that you passed up on Justin Fields. And what that means to your fantasy team, I would draft him this year. I think the biggest question for us is when is he going to start? Is it going to be week 1? I mean, we would miss out on the Andy Dalton revenge game in week 2, so I don't know about that. Could it be later in the season? I've identified a couple of possibilities. Week 4, the Bears are playing host to the Lions. They could be 1-2 at that point. Listen, I'm realistic. I know my team. They could be 1-2 at that point. They could make a change there. They got a bye week after week 9. The point is when Justin Fields gets on the field, you are going to want to start him in fantasy. I think he's ready to go. I think we've seen this. When we see these guys dominate in college at a big Power 5 level, they come in immediately and start playing well. Look at what Deshaun Watson did on the field. Look at Justin Herbert last year. We're going to want to be in. We're going to want to be in on Justin Fields.
I completely agree with that, but I think the guy that we might be a little bit wary of when Fields gets on the field is Tariq Cohen. And, he's the guy that everybody pegs, somebody who might really cut into David Montgomery's production. But I think Fields might cut into Cohen's production in the sense that, look, throw last year out because, Cohen was injured and missed most of the season. Every other year, he's had 70 or more targets. But I'm just wondering, now that you've got Fields there as opposed to Mitch Trubisky the last couple of years, will Matt Nagy want to have more of a vertical offense? You've got Robinson. You've got Mooney there. Can you stretch the field a little bit more with Justin Fields under center? And if so, does that mean fewer targets for Cohen? That really is his stock in trade in fantasy. And if he's not catching the football, then his fantasy value takes a major hit.
Okay, Adam Rank, are you listening right now? Or are you tuned into what I'm about to say? Darnell Mooney is going to be a huge fantasy sleeper with an incredible upside. I know you love this, Adam Rank, but Mooney slots in seamlessly behind Allen Robinson, and now he enters his second year in the league. Now, he appeared in every single game that the Chicago Bears played last season as a rookie, nearly seeing 100 targets and leading the Bears in this stat. He led the Bears in yards after catch per reception. Now, once Justin Fields is the starting quarterback for Chicago, defenses are going to have to heavily target Allen Robinson, meaning the floor is completely going to be open for Darnell Mooney. I think he is going to be an insane fantasy sleeper, so please listen and get him on your squad.
The best part about that video package they were showing is he absolutely made Jalen Ramsey look silly in a matchup, but Nick Foles, I think it was Foles or it doesn't matter, couldn't hit him. He was wide open all day. Darnell Mooney is going to have a huge breakout season. I agree, Kimmy.
And we have been waiting for a second receiver in Chicago to break out. We really could be that guy in 2021. All right, let's finish up our quarterback chat with Mac Jones. He goes to New England, where he's playing alongside, at least he's on the roster alongside, Cam Newton. By the way, if you're really into this sort of thing, Mac spelled backwards is Cam. Kimmy, is he worth taking a flyer on this year?
Whoa.
No. Do you see me? Okay, here, ready? This is me blankly staring in the eyes of Cam Newton. Cam Newton is still the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots. I understand that this offense needs to throw the ball more. Cam Newton only had 8 passing touchdowns, but he did rush for 12 rushing touchdowns. Mac is going to be great, right? Once he actually gets on the field. I don't know when that's going to be. I'm still going to put my stock in Cam Newton with his incredible rushing upside. Mac Jones, not drafting you. I'm sorry, buddy.
I'm not drafting him either. I actually would consider drafting Cam Newton kind of late, I think, in the beginning of the season, especially. He's going to be the valuable person here. And also, he hasn't gotten, bad. He's not broken. We haven't canceled him. It's Cam Newton. He was, last year was last year. Moving forward, in the beginning of last year, we saw what I think we'll see kind of this year with all of those rushing opportunities. It's Cam's opportunity here, especially with those heavy sets, with the investment they made at the tight end position.
You know what? No matter who the quarterback is, I think we're kind of undervaluing James White. And again, I don't care who the quarterback is. White has been one of their most reliable receivers over the last number of years. I know they made a huge investment in the offseason at the wide receiver position, but for me, I still see James White as their top pass catcher.
Do you think this Patriots offense is going to be interesting to watch in training camp in the preseason, just to get a sense of how all these pieces fit together? I mean, it's been a long time since we've had, I think, this many questions about a Patriots offense. It'll be interesting to watch.